Everyone, it's Sandra, and this is my indoor worm bin I call Eat My Shorts. It was only 3.5 days ago that I set Eat My Shorts up for a much needed migration for a harvest. And so ready or not, I'm pulling out the vermicompost, going to age it out in a bin no matter what it looks like and no matter how many worms have migrated out of this zone into this zone. Here's our friendly pill bug on the side there, helping me crunch through all these leaf stems and everything. These white dots are from the Amazon mailer that I had on top, and they eventually will decompose. This is a plastic liner to a takeout container that I've been using just to keep extra humidity in the migration zone. I'll put a little insert of the video of my last feeding where I tried to migrate the worms. 3 days ago, I rifled through this material and just piled up any chunkier bits on that plastic liner. It's a great way to keep the material separate. Anytime I found something I wanted to keep in the next bin cycle, like this gorgeous cocoon, I put it in the zone that was going to be staying in the bin, which is the new feed-in zone. That's where I hope all the worms will migrate. I gave them back all this chunky material, which of course is well inoculated, topped it up with some shredded maple leaves to give the worms a look at some nice new carbon, continued to pick out some leaf stems where I found them, and even some cocoons. Again, want to keep those in the bin, and even a pill bug that I also want to stay in my bin to keep working on that chunkier material. Finally, I topped it up with some soaking wet watermelon rinds and a napkin and some very wet tea leaves. Covered it all up, and then we come to today. So obviously today I want to pull out the bulk of this vermicompost, and at the end I'll turn over the migration zone and we'll see how many worms actually made it in there. And as I pull out this material, if I see clumps of worms, cocoons, whatever, I will put them in the zone. So about from here on is going to stay in this bin to keep this microbiome alive, and all of this is going to come out. So I will start pulling it out and just fast forward through this bit and slow it down if I come across anything interesting. So if you've never seen me do this before, I always try to remember to pull the vermicompost out from the far end. You see there's still worms in here. And so my hand pulling the vermicompost out from this far end away from the migration zone is going to shoo worms that haven't migrated yet, perhaps into the migration zone. So I'm kind of herding them as I go. So I thought I'd pulled out most of the chunky bits, but obviously I missed this one avocado peel. I'm okay if I get chunky bits in the vermicompost that I'm pulling out, because eventually, as I age the castings, this will deteriorate, decompose even more. But if I see it as I'm pulling it out, like these needle stems and everything, leaf stems, I might as well just keep putting it into the zone that is staying in the bin. I don't sift my vermicompost anymore. I find that the little bit that's left in the castings works well with my policy of trying always to age out castings before I use them, which means the microbes and any worms or cocoons that are left behind still have nourishment in there. And these little scraps of food that are left in there will continue to feed this living material. Obviously, I want this guy to stay in the bin so he can continue to eat those chunky bits from my chunky migration. As I get closer to the migration zone, I'm running into more leaf stems and whatnot. Eventually, I'll get to the point that there's just too much chunky material left over, and I will just call it quits and leave the rest of that material in the bin. I'm not quite there yet. Just spotted a cocoon, so I'll bring it back All right, I think just one more handful here. You can see that I am leaving a considerable amount still on the walls, which is great. In my opinion, never clean your worm bin. That these castings that are left on the edges will greatly inoculate your next generation of your worm bin, your next cycle. Okay, let's take a look and see the worms that may or may not still be in here. Maybe I've pulled a lot of them out. Oh, there they are. Here's Eat My Shorts worms. And I have a little bit more new bedding to give them today. So yeah, they did migrate. Like I said, it was watermelon. There they go. It was a watermelon migration. So that gives a really great moisture gradient as well as a sugar gradient. So the worms responded to it just in 3 days. I'm delighted. I'll stir up this bit. There we go. So basically what I've done is I've spread all of the old migration zone along the bottom of this bin. All of the worms, all of the food. So I've given these worms a little bit of a tousling. So in this very quick harvest, it's probably only taken me about 6 minutes total, I'm going to now just give them a topping of fresh bedding, and I'm going to leave them alone for a few days. Obviously, they're still working on that watermelon. For bedding today, there's still some water in it. I've been soaking these leaves, and obviously there's needles in there, which if you live in my yard, you're going to get needles, and a little bit of newspaper. So I'm going to show you, after I put this bedding on, I'm going to show you the harvest. So this was a very quick migration, just 3 days with watermelon, and a very quick harvest. It's that simple. Don't have to get much more complicated than that when you do worm farming. So there's a little bit of fresh carbon for these worms to get eventually their mouths onto. And I'm just going to cover that up. Now let's take a look at the harvested material. So here's the material I pulled out of Eat My Shorts. Beautiful, dark and rich. I'm not going to fuss with it right now and pull these worms and cocoons that you're seeing go by. You know, I do that of an evening. I'll go through probably tonight or tomorrow night, and like these bits of avocado shell that are still in there, and the adult worms, I will just sit and watch a movie and pull the worms and pull the needle stems and things like that, and then just leave the rest for a month or so, and then check it again, pull the adults, and at that point I can decide whether I'm satisfied, and the vermicompost or the castings at that point can go out to my garden. So here's the bonus. I sat and watched one of those mindless Hallmark movies, because you need to watch something that you don't need to watch the screen, because I was focusing on these guys, pulling out these worms and these overs from those castings. And it was just as easy as that. Just in one evening, I pulled out all of these gorgeous adults, actually quite a few juveniles, and lots of cocoons. So there you go. That's a harvest done in no time at all. And these worms are going to settle back into their home. I'll probably give them some food in a day or two. All right, this time it's really goodbye. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.